Hello and welcome to another video. So we're taking another look at Spell Daria. It's been about a week since I looked at it last and it's still performing just as well, if not better now than it was before. I've always been a big fan of Daria decks and at the moment they're pretty much top tier. There isn't much that really has a competitive edge against them, and the decks that do are only a very slight edge. So overall I find this deck is absolutely crazy. So this one is the spell variation. There is also a tempo variation. I've messed around with the tempo variation a little bit over the last 7 days and really just couldn't get comfortable with it, and always fell back to the spell variant as being much more consistent and much more likely to win me games. So hopefully you guys will be able to see that. And honestly, there's not too much more to cover about this deck. You're basically dropping things like Frozen Mammoth along with Daria or Chimera, just swarming your board, maximizing your health so that you can deal as much damage as you can. And that's pretty straightforward. You want to get Daria as early as possible. If not, you want to aim for Ogla, Blade Mage or Chimera in your openers, so that you at least have something decent to spell burst in the early game. And that's about it for the deck, so we'll get right into some games and take a look. Alright, first up we've got Rune versus Rune. So these are pretty common matches, I would say. Considering how popular Rune still is, whether it's Burn variant or whether it's Daria variant, they're both reasonably popular. Burn is favoured against Daria, at least in my opinion and my experimentation. Agroforest also is quite strong against Daria, although the win percentages still aren't that high. I would consider that they're reasonably close, with maybe a 60% to 40% split with Agroforest, for example, which really isn't that big of a split when you consider the fact that Daria only needs to get a half decent hand to really roll any class at the moment. So we start off with probably the most ideal hand, being able to play a 1-drops, playing Daria, playing out of spells, all in order pretty nicely, gaining really nice draw power while at the same time boosting Daria crazy amounts. Turn 3 looks really promising, being able to play Mysterious Knowledge again and then back into a Mysterious Circle. Always a solid play when you can just drop those in combo on turn 3. I think that's why that card is so good. Being able to use it both turn 1 and turn 3 and all the way through is just really solid. So I do decide to go for the draws because I know Daria is going to be playable next turn anyway. Luckily we do draw the Insight, which is actually really good for this hand. Being able to get a 1-drop spell after you've just played a 3-drop draw opens up a lot of options, especially when Daria is only costing 3 points now. Of course they are aiming for that Conjure Golem, bloody Conjure Guardian sort of stuff, so they really did swarm the board. I mean, Daria mirrors are always a little tricky. It comes down to who can swarm harder and survive. But with what I've got here, I should have enough to kind of deal with most of their stuff here. So I do deal with that quite effectively. I do decide to go for the Circle with probably the Evolve and the Ogla, and then just Daria away the rest because it's really not worth keeping at this stage. If there was something more worthwhile, I probably would have kept it, but no need with this hand. And now that we've got double Wind Blast clearing the board next turn, it should be really easy. We shouldn't have any issues at all with dealing with these boards. Ogla gets a nice trade. I get to throw my other Ogla out. We got a nice 14 health damage there that they can't easily deal with. Even with Wind Blast there, it's going to make things tricky for them.
Yeah, right.
So they did get a missile, so that's a little bit of a downer. But I'll be able to throw a Frozen Mammoth here, trade in my Ogla, let it live, and Wind Blast their 4-2 while also dealing 5 damage to their face, leaving them at 11, just, you know, barely above that 10 threshold that we really want them at, just to kind of burst them down quickly. So they use their missile, don't really do much else. I mean, what else was there really for them to do, but we do get a draw, which is great because I was really hoping I was able to draw some stuff, and getting the Daria is also really perfect. Being able to take advantage of that, I also decided to go for the Magic Owl boost because boosting the Blade Mage, Wind Blast and Daria all at the same time will be really handy, especially when I have Frozen Mammoth in my follow-up turn. Being able to drop Frozen Mammoth along with that Daria is going to be really important to my board state. It's going to be very hard for them to clear 2 Frozen Mammoths and a Daria all in the same turn. they've also got to manage to clear this entire board without losing too much. Lucky for them, they have just enough to do so. Lucky for me though, I have a half decent hand. Especially during Chimera. Chimera just opens up a couple more late game options. Like if they play something I need to clear immediately, Chimera is a great option. Otherwise it will probably just be a Daria thrown to the board. There won't be any other reason not to. Especially since Daria's chance of pulling Chimera is reasonably high. And Guardian Golem, great. Gotta love that card.
Time to head home.
I do get Piercing Rune, not the most handy thing to get right now. And we actually have a pretty reasonable turn. I mean, yes, Chimera is playable, but is it really worth trading it here? Might be worth using. But I have got Blade Mage, I can also use this Enchanted Sword plus Chimera. I'm going to get 4 damage to face, leaving them at 1. Setting up for lethal with Magic Missile in the following turn, and pretty much going all the way to the bank with this deck. I mean, how do you counter this board? Mutagenic Bolt? Sure. Too bad you're already at 1 health and would need to clear your entire Mutagenic just to survive. And a single shot ping will clear out this rune player. I mean, there's really nothing to it. My next matchup is Dragon. Dragon I haven't seen too much of, but when I do, it usually is getting stomped now, which I'm really happy to see. I don't like versing Dragon much and don't really enjoy its ramp mechanics. Would much rather see Dragon focus on other mechanics. I really wish they had followed discard a bit more, instead of just purely going into the whole ramp to 7 and just play crazy shit, which is kind of irritating. So again, we start off with a pretty good hand, not the best because we don't really draw anything that we can actually spell boost this turn. Kind of unfortunate. Wind Blast, I mean, is fine, it's going to deal with something, but we don't really have anything else. Fortunately, that Daria draw makes up for this entire hand. Now we've actually got something viable to use, and Ogler as well. Really fixes up your hand when you draw just a couple of decent spell boostable cards. Really, really helps you out. So knowing they only played a 1-2 and probably aren't going to play much next, Frozen Mammoth gets a really nice chance to drop onto the board. Not too much concern just dropping that down.
He's still no match for Mr. Dragon. Unbelievable!
And of course, Magic Owl gives us a nice boost. I do make a slight misstep here, I would say. I was going to use the missile or the Wind Blast on the 2-2 and then just use the Owl, but I decided to end up doing it the wrong way around. So my Owl ended up with 1 less health than it probably should have had, which overall probably won't make the hugest difference, but it would have been nice to have that 1 extra health just in case they did have something like Blazing Breath, which would force them to actually play it and trade instead of just straight out killing me. So those tiny little things, sometimes you make a mistake. Not always the easiest thing to fix. But we do follow that up with a really quite nice clear and then a pretty solid double Ogler turn. I mean, Dragon's not going to deal with that extremely quickly, which is really good for me. I don't really want them to deal with my board instantly and have no other option. And being able to throw Daria on 6 is actually pretty much perfect. We get more than enough cards to really set up my next turn. We get the Mammoth, we can deal 8 damage this turn, plus the 1 ping, so 9 total. Really looking at quite a decent hand. Especially when you consider Blade Mage and Piercing Rune. Both are going to be really, really solid in the next turn. I mean, that alone is 6 damage, so we don't need 3 to live. Luckily, Dragon concedes anyway, so it doesn't end up mattering. And my last matchup here is against another rune class. Great.
I guess you're looking for a fight.
Of course, this one has to taunt me with that pretty Daria leader, which I still wish I had. I just didn't get lucky enough to get one, and I haven't achieved it since. Lucky for us, we start off with pretty much an ideal hand again. It's really quite consistent. I think Out of the last 6 games I've played, only one hand is bricked, which is pretty good. 1 in 6 hands bricking is really solid for a Daria deck. And even some of the games I do get very close to bricking, usually it's not too hard to unbrick yourself with the draw power and then just board clearing really quite effectively. There was a couple of games I've played where I didn't even need Daria to really close the game. It was mainly just an extra additive that I could throw down at the end to just secure the victory. The opponent doesn't really do too much here. They kind of just ping me, go for some face damage. Really nothing too substantial. I do end up just throwing the frozen mammoth down again. I really want that out on 3 because it's hard just to fit that into your curve nicely, especially if you want to play Daria on say 5. It's just really difficult to fit it in there. Of course I get the missile, which is awesome. I do end up drawing the insight, which changes up my game plan a bit. I was going to go missile into circle, but then getting that insight allowed me to play the Ogla, so going for that play was a little bit better, being able to build a little bit of a board, force out a trade if possible. If not, that's still fine too.
You ready for the good stuff?
And Daria is at 5, so we have a couple of choices. We can either focus on our hand, use that to our advantage, or literally just throw down the Daria and hope for the best. Either option is pretty solid, and having to draw a second Daria, doesn't feel good. Do decide to go for the hand option, just clearing out some of our hand here, using some of it for trade and getting a little bit of damage to the face. Plus this way we should be able to use Piercing Rune next turn. Daria can drop at 3 cost or 2 cost by the time Piercing Rune is actually played, and at that stage we should be pretty secure in our game. Of course they drop their own Daria. Yay. So with their own Daria, 7/7, quite a solid one, although Mammoth will deal with it pretty quickly. I mean, Mammoth deals with Daria really nicely in most cases. Ooh, better than Piercing Rune, double Mammoth.
With a bang and a boom.
Double Mammoth into Daria. That is some sick amount of damage here. I'm going to be able to trade off the Imperial Mammoth into the Daria, and then set up probably the hardest board to clear for this entire game.
Been ages since this has happened.
I mean, dealing with what appears to be, I think, 18? Yeah, 18 health. Ugh, wouldn't want to be that Daria player right now.
Atone with your lifeblood.
So we've got 15 damage, Piercing Rune adds 2, that's 17 damage total. With an evolve, I think that gives us 19, so next turn is 19 damage. And they don't have anything left to actually deal with this. So Piercing Rune will kill the 2/2. Then we send everything to face for more than enough damage. Quite an easy lethal in the end, so not too bad at all. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, you will find the deck list in the description below, along with any other links that you might be interested in. Honestly, I had a lot of fun with this. Daria is always one of probably my most personal favorite decks, right up there with Agrobats, which is another one of my favorites. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time. See ya.